Brian.
Okay.
Okay, so Brian, how would I do this in legalese? Let the recording show that this is a re-recording. Let the record show this is a re-recording, take two, of Brian speaking to us about elder care and the law.
Very well done. Let the record the record show states.
Thank you.
The record so states. So where we left off, I'll rewind by 2 minutes, like what DVR does. If you stop the show, it always jumps back 2 minutes so you can pick up where you left off. We were talking about home care and what it costs, and home care being what you can get in any independent, non-clinical or non-institutional environment. It's your home, essentially. That's why they call it home care. No surprise there. It's going to cost somewhere around the range of $30 an hour. It could be a couple bucks cheaper, it could be a couple bucks more, but that's about what we're seeing now for a home health aide, non-medical home health aide, to come in and help with those issues. The beauty, the benefit of home health aides is it's scalable. You can bring in someone 24 hours a day. You can bring in someone for 5 hours a day, whatever you need. That also, though, cuts both ways, because depending on the need, you might be paying someone to sit there to react instead of proact. So if you or a loved one needs help getting up in the morning, getting dressed, getting breakfast, and then you're good all day, you have a couple hours, 2, 3, 4 hours. But if you or a loved one suffers from cognitive impairment and needs a lot of supervision to stay safe, you could be paying a significant sum of money for someone to be there just in case. And to put this in perspective, I think with an hourly care cost compared to other types of care, you have to have the right perspective. If you were to use 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, it would cost about $10,000 a month to have a home health aide in your house. And another downside of late, because there's a caregiving crisis in the United States, many agencies are having difficulty staffing shorter duration cases. So if you call and say, I need 2 or 3 hours in the morning, they might not have the caregivers to staff it because they're dealing with 12 and 24-hour cases. But it's still a fantastic option because many, many, many of our families that we work with want to stay home. So that's home care. The next step is when you get into institutional care. And I hate that phrase because many of these communities, they're not institutions. You think institution and you think the house on the building on the hill, that with the gates, and it's an institution, but it isn't. That's really not true. The next step is personal care or memory care or assisted living. And I'm going to describe to you why I used all three and what the differences are. So in Pennsylvania, we largely do not actually have assisted living facilities. We have personal care homes. It's two different sets of licensing in Pennsylvania. You can be in a licensed assisted living or a licensed personal care home. For all intents and purposes, it's largely a distinction without a difference, but there are some differences. The majority of the quote assisted livings in Pennsylvania are actually personal care homes, although we often use the term assisted living or personal care interchangeably. New Jersey has all assisted living facilities. There's also memory care. Memory care is either a section, a unit, a building within a traditional assisted living, or a standalone. And memory care communities are designed for those with cognitive impairment. The staff is specially trained, the activities are specially provided, the architecture of the building itself is designed to address those issues. And the biggest qualifier for memory care is a secured facility. So although the residents have indoor, outdoor access, can go wherever they want, they can't leave campus and potentially expose themselves to physical danger. The cost here, in my experience, varies the most wildly. It depends on a variety of variables. It depends on your care costs, meaning how much care you actually need. There are different care levels. It depends on if you have a studio or a one-bedroom apartment. It depends on the type of facility, the type of community. There are some that are just blanket more expensive, and there are some that are less expensive. So I typically prepare families for a cost of around $6,500 to $8,500 a month as a range, but I certainly have families paying as low as $4,500, and I've got families paying as high as $12,000 in assisted living, personal care, memory care. So that's the hardest one to really pin down. And each resident could be paying a slightly different fee because it all depends on a variety of factors. And then all the way over here, we have the nursing home, which many, many people are familiar with. A nursing home is a high clinical environment. It provides a high level of skilled clinical care. And it's for those that have a high need that can't be met in personal care or assisted living. Nursing homes are going to range between $12,000 and $15,000 a month in southeastern Pennsylvania and southern New Jersey. Although there's a range of 12 to 15, everybody in a nursing home is going to pay the same rate. The only difference is a shared room versus a private room. But everybody's either going to pay $400 or $500 a day for a single room, $450 a day for a private room. There's not going to be variances based on care need. It's going to be a fixed rate for almost everyone in there with limited exception. So those are the three care environments, the general three care options that exist. We have home care, we have assisted living, we have nursing home. Now, many of you might be aware of the concept of all three of these levels of care on one campus. That's an independent living apartment, assisted living or personal care, and a nursing home. Those are commonly referred to as continuing care retirement communities, or CCRC. Those are designed for people that want to age in place. When I say age in place, not necessarily in the same room, but in the same community. Some that you might be aware of: Ann's Choice in Warminster, Wesley Enhanced Living, Deer Meadows, the ACTS, the ACTS communities. Those are just to name a few. Those are a beast in and of themselves. The cost for those, while they tend to track the three care options we talked about, they have all different ways to move in. You sometimes buy in with a big six-figure chunk of change. Sometimes you pay fee for service. Sometimes you go right to the assisted living. Sometimes you have to come in independent living. It all depends on the type of community you're looking at. So we're not going to get too far in the weeds on CCRCs because they are very confusing and there's a lot of options there. But so we know what we're looking at here. We know that if we need care, we're probably looking at somewhere between $5,000 to $15,000 a month. And I can tell you that the statistics show 70% of Pennsylvanians are going to require care of some kind. And the number one reason people require care now and will continue to require care into the future is dementia or cognitive impairment. And the unfortunate reality that we're seeing now is the trajectory of these diseases is anywhere from 8 to 20 years from the start of what we would call disability or the need for care to passing. So gone are the days where most people were in nursing homes because of Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis or stroke, and they were there for the classic 2.4 years. While the average length of stay in a nursing home hasn't changed much, what has changed is how long people need care and where it's starting. It's starting in the home and they're working their way along. So we have extraordinary expenses. We just went through this. Anywhere from $60,000 to $170,000 a year is what it could potentially cost. So you could conceivably be spending over $1 million caring for yourself or a loved one into the future. So the question is, what's the best care for my loved one? But the question also is, how the heck are we going to pay for it? So in Pennsylvania, in New Jersey, in the United States, there's three ways to pay for care. One is the money in the bank, your private funds. That means cash, CDs, mutual funds, ETFs, investments, retirement accounts, anything you have that is money or can be converted to money, including your home. Second is long-term care insurance. Now, I'm not going to ask you guys to raise your hands, but I'd be willing to bet that less than a handful of you actually have long-term care insurance, because nationally, less than a handful of people have met long-term care insurance. But if you have it, it will pay for care. It'll either pay for a portion of it, possibly all of it, but typically for a fixed period of time, anywhere from a year to maybe 5 years. It's very unusual to see policies that pay for lifetime. And the last one is public benefits. And the reason I say public benefits and not Medicaid is because we have Medicaid for every citizen. We have veterans benefits for eligible veterans and their spouses. So those are both public benefits, but the VA benefits are far less utilized for a whole bunch of reasons. One, not everyone's a veteran or married to one, and they're decreasingly so. We have fewer and fewer veterans. World War II, Korea, Vietnam. There are just fewer veterans from each conflict. And the veterans benefits don't cover quite as much as Medicaid does. When I say quite as much, they don't cover nearly as much. So what I'd like to do now that we've talked about what the care options are and what they cost is go into those two benefit programs. But before we jump into what Medicaid is, what it covers, how it works, and the VA benefit, Allison, are there any questions that you'd like me to address?
Well, when we came back into the room, I didn't realize that the chat had been deactivated. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
So I just reactivated it. Karen Williams was raising her hand. Karen, I'm going to ask if you have a question to put it in the chat now. No, you're shaking.
And we can come back to it after we have after we touch on the benefits. No problem at all. Okay. So both of these programs, Medicaid and VA benefits, are extraordinarily complicated. I'm going to use Medicaid first because it's the most commonly utilized. It's the one that's most commonly understood. And it's the one most people are familiar with and want to learn about. So we're going to hit that first. So Medicaid's a public benefit program, and I am a giant elder care nerd, and I love the history of everything. I can talk to you about why the trusts that we use are founded in laws from 1920. I can talk to you about why the power of attorney is general durable, what that means. And with Medicaid, we're going to go all the way back to 1965. So past in 1965, Medicaid was, among other things, a long-term care benefit. We wanted to be able to provide for people who couldn't care for themselves, couldn't afford care as they aged. And Medicaid came about. And so we're going to pay for people in a nursing home if they need care. And there's two rules to it. You got to need care and you got to be broke. So in Pennsylvania, what that means is if you were in a nursing home and your assets in the bank are less than $2,400, possibly $8,000, but if we'll use $2,400 for today, you can qualify for Medicaid. So essentially, I think we can all agree, $2,400, you're broke. That's all you get to keep. This includes retirement accounts. This includes your house. This includes cash in the bank. So if you were in a nursing home and you were broke, you can apply for Medicaid. And that's easy to show. That's a bank statement, and that's a clinical form filled out by the nursing home or a physician. The reason Medicaid is so staggeringly difficult, so obscenely challenging to obtain, isn't showing that you're eligible. It's proving how you spent your money. Because in 1965, when Medicaid was first passed, people could give away every penny they owned, walk into a nursing home, apply for Medicaid, and get approved the next day. And everyone realized that wasn't fair. So over the course of the last 60 years, the government implemented a series of look-backs. It was initially 9 months, then a year, then 3 years, and now it's 5 years or 60 months, 60 months. A look-back is where the caseworker reviewing an application for benefits who works for the county says, okay, you had this much money 5 years ago. How'd you get all the way down to here today? That's the 5-year look back. And they're looking for transfers of assets for less than fair value. It's called a gift. It's simple, it's a gift. And a gift is more than what you're thinking of. The thought of a gift conjures in someone's mind, happy birthday. Congratulations on your wedding, your bar mitzvah, your christening, whatever it might be, you think of a gift. But a gift in the Medicaid context is spending money for the benefit of another. So for example, if you're a grandparent and you paid for one of your grandchildren to go to day camp or college or private school, that's a gift. If your adult child's getting married and you write a check for $20,000 to the DJ, the florist, and the photographer, that's a gift. And if you've made those gifts, the caseworker adds them up and divides them by the statewide average cost of nursing home care, which is presently about $11,000 a month. And the result is a period of months that Medicaid won't pay for you. So to put in perspective, you gave away $100,000, you're going to get a penalty period of like 10 months. And what that practically means, how that affects you, you're in a nursing home, you are broke, there's no other way to pay for care, and you chose to give away your beach house worth $200,000, Medicaid will say, we're not going to pay for you for 20 months because you gave away an asset that could have been converted to pay for your care. It's a look back, it's a penalty. And the only way to address it is either find someone else to pay the bill or get the assets back, get the gift back. Otherwise, you're going to be left holding the bag. Now, that's base Medicaid eligibility. But I see a number of couples on this call. I see, I'm going to make a presumption here that there's a couple that are married, that there are people that are married here. I probably just scared the pants off of you saying you're only going to have $2,400. But there are community spouse or healthy spouse resource protections. They're called spousal impoverishment protections. The government has created a set of rules that says you will not go broke paying for the care of your loved one if they need Medicaid. The rules are extraordinarily complicated. So I'm going to hit you on the high level, and then I'm going to tell you that whatever your concerns are, there are ways to protect you and protect your healthy spouse. So initially, you got to count up all the money. And those are called your countable assets. The healthy spouse is allowed to keep half of the countable assets with an absolute maximum of $130,000. So let me put that in perspective. Let me visit this again. So if your countable assets are $200,000, the healthy spouse keeps 100. If your countable assets are $500,000, the healthy spouse keeps 130 because there's an absolute maximum. Everything else has to be spent down to zero before you can qualify for Medicaid. Now, there's a couple of protections here as well. The primary residence, if properly planned with, is completely protected for the healthy spouse. And in Pennsylvania alone, the retirement accounts of the healthy spouse are completely exempt. They are non-countable. That means 401k, 403b, 457, IRA, Roth IRA, tax-deferred annuities, anything that is a retirement account is completely exempt. And that is a very, very powerful provision. We have families, wife has $1 million in a 401k, and we're able to get Medicaid and preserve her quality of life. That's a very powerful provision, but doesn't apply in New Jersey. So there are all kinds of protections that we have for the healthy spouse: retirement accounts in PA, the primary residence, the $130,000 or the allowance that you're allowed to keep. The question becomes, what do you do with the spend down? You could, with that $500,000 example, you have $370,000 to spend down. That's like 2 to 3 years worth of nursing home care. So what do you do with that? Well, if you're in a crisis and you're looking at Medicaid or you're looking at a nursing home right now or in the very near future, there are ways that we can protect it for the healthy spouse. There are things that we can do. I'm not going to go into it today because they're very complicated, but there are ways that we can protect those funds and accelerate eligibility for Medicaid so we can enhance the healthy spouse's quality of life, but make sure we can provide care for the sick spouse. Now, that sounds great. We get to protect the retirement accounts in Pennsylvania, but not New Jersey. So everybody should rush over to Pennsylvania, right? Come to Pennsylvania and get Medicaid. If you need a nursing home and your healthy spouse has retirement accounts, yeah, that can make sense. And you can walk right across the Ben Franklin Bridge, right across the Walt Whitman or the Betsy Ross, walk into a Pennsylvania nursing home and be there for one day, and you can apply for Medicaid in Pennsylvania. Medicaid is a federal program administered by the states, which means wherever you are when you need it is where you get it. But the downside to Pennsylvania, Medicaid does not cover assisted living. Hard stop. There is no Medicaid in assisted living in Pennsylvania, but there is in New Jersey. So in New Jersey, if you're looking at assisted living, I'm sorry, let me flip that. If you're looking at assisted living, you might want to consider New Jersey. It's not perfect, but you can be in a less restrictive environment, a more homey environment, a more community feel environment in assisted living, and theoretically get Medicaid. Now, why do I say theoretically? Because nursing homes are required by federal law to accept Medicaid as a payer source. If you're in a bed there and you say, I need Medicaid and I've been here for 1 day or 1 year, they're legally required to accept Medicaid. They can't kick you out because you need Medicaid. In assisted living in New Jersey, the facilities are legally permitted to require a period of private payment, usually 2 years, before they'll accept Medicaid as a payer source. And the facilities are required to allocate only 10% of their beds to Medicaid recipients. So what that means is you go to ABC Assisted Living and you say, okay, I'm going to pay for 2 years. I'm going to pay for 3 years. Paid my 3 years, and you knock on the business office door and say, hey, I'm out of money, but I've been here for 3 years. I need Medicaid. They are legally permitted to say, sorry, our 10% of beds are filled. You got to go. So it's not perfect, but there's the opportunity. And the last component of Medicaid that people are always asking is, what if I want Medicaid in my house? What if I want to stay home and get Medicaid? What if I want to stay in home and have Medicaid send a home health aide to care for me? It is available in both states, Pennsylvania and New Jersey. However, Pennsylvania only allows Medicaid in a private residence for people whose income is less than $2,382 per month. It's called the income cap. So if your income, your gross income, exceeds that figure, which changes every year, you will not qualify for Medicaid without sophisticated planning. There's ways to do it, but you can't just apply. There's all kinds of planning that has to be done to address that income issue. You can still qualify for it, you just have to do the right planning. But that income cap significantly stymies how many people access Medicaid in the home because they don't know how to plan around it. So that's Medicaid. That's a primer. I hope your heads are spinning, because Justice Brennan, he was a Supreme Court justice in a Supreme Court case, said, when ruling on a Medicaid case, the Medicaid law is the most egregious text ever written. It is thoroughly impenetrable, the most torturous reading of any kind. And he's right. I'm immersed in this daily, and it's taken me my entire career to become an expert in this. It is an extraordinarily complicated set of laws. So I hope your heads are spinning, because you're not supposed to get this today. I don't expect you to run out there and say, oh, I'm an elder law attorney, I'm going to start slinging Medicaid applications. It doesn't work like that. Your head should spin. And what I want you to take away from this is that this public benefit is available. Don't let yourself be scared out of seeking it if you think your income is too high, or if you think your assets are too high, or if you think you want assisted living over home care over nursing home. If you think you might qualify for it, it never hurts to have a conversation with somebody who can help you get it. Now, Allison, let's take questions on this before we go to the VA benefits.
So we have a few questions about pensions versus retirement accounts. Would pensions be counted, at least in Pennsylvania, as not counted towards this benefit?
That's a great question, and I should have touched on that. Thank you. The income source of the healthy spouse is protected no matter how high it is. So what that means is, let's say we have a wife who's healthy and husband's going to a nursing home. And wife was a school teacher, so she's got $3,000 a month in a pension. She's got $2,000 a month from Social Security. She keeps that $5,000 a month. Husband's income goes to the nursing home. So whether it's a pension or Social Security, is protected. However, what if we have a low-income spouse? I have a family I'm working with right now. Husband's income is about $4,000 a month, pension, Social Security. Wife has $898 a month from Social Security. Husband's going to a nursing home. $900 a month is not enough to live on. So Medicaid law allows the wife to get a stipend from her husband's income every month to bring her up to what's referred to as a minimum monthly income, so she can maintain her quality of life. And it's a range between about $2,000 and $3,000 a month that is designed to help maintain quality of life. So there's always resources there. Good, great question.
Great question. And then we also got a question about Delaware. Does Delaware have that same pension/retirement account protection?
That's a great question too, but I don't know. We are not licensed in Delaware, but I invite you to reach out to me because we work with a firm very closely that does what we do in Wilmington, and they're excellent at this. So I'm happy to make that recommendation.
Okay, great. I will facilitate that. And then we have a question here. I think you touched on this a little bit. Is there a financial threshold for providing Medicaid covered private residence? So I'm assuming this means assisted living, like in New Jersey. Does
Mhm.
that threshold apply to the family or just the individual who is ill?
So if it's a single individual, it just applies to the individual. If it's a married couple, now we start talking about spousal impoverishment provisions. That's where we have the healthy spouse keeps some money, keeps the house, then some money has to be spent down. So it really depends on circumstances because it depends on the nature of your assets. It depends on if you have retirement accounts in Pennsylvania, depends on if you have them in New Jersey, what kind of care you need, what your expenses and income are. But the short answer is your healthy spouse will hopefully never go broke, but with the right planning, they can do a whole lot better than not going broke.
Okay. We had a correction. I misunderstood the question. So the question was
Sure.
actually, does this apply to personal care at home in someone's private residence?
Oh yeah, it does. So the Medicaid rules for eligibility in a private residence are the same as in a nursing home. The only difference is that income cap we talked about in the home that can that can create ineligibility for benefits if you're in a private residence. Otherwise, everything's the same. The downside, though, Allison, and whomever asked that question, is that Medicaid in the home is not retroactive. So what that means is if I go to a nursing home and I have no money left and I apply for Medicaid, it routinely takes 6 to 9 months for the application to be reviewed, approved, and benefits to start paying. So if I apply January 1st and my benefits are approved September 1st, Medicaid pays the nursing home all the way back. If I'm in my private residence and I need care and I'm broke and I apply for Medicaid, that period of time called the pending period, you get no care provided. So if you or a loved one is looking at that circumstance, there are very, very comprehensive planning options that can both accelerate eligibility for Medicaid and preserve resources that can be used to pay for care during that pending period. So you're not broke and just waiting there for a caregiver to show up.
Thank you, Brian.
You got it.
Some folks are asking me if this will be available. Yes, we're recording this. The recordings have closed captioning.
And I have to make sure I don't say anything objectionable because it will live forever.
It will live forever on the Penn Memory Center website.
Okay.
I think those are most of the questions, Brian. I think we're safe to move on to VA benefits. And then if folks have other questions about continuum of care, you can keep sending them to me in the chat and I'll raise them after Brian's next sort of chunk of information.
Okay. So VA benefits. This applies to, as I mentioned, a much smaller subset of the population because not everyone's a veteran. But the VA program we're talking about is commonly referred to as aid and attendance. It's really the full title is the Veterans Administration Improved Pension, but we're going to call it A&A, aid and attendance. So aid and attendance is a cash benefit that can that can pay between $1,200 and $2,200 per month to an eligible veteran or a veteran's widowed spouse. And the funds it's just money. It just deposits into your account and you can use it for whatever purpose you wish. Most frequently, it is used to pay for care costs. And for $2,200 a month for a married veteran, $1,800 for a single veteran, or even $1,200 for the widowed spouse, that's a significant chunk when you're looking at assisted living. You know, if you're looking at someone who's got Social Security of $1,500, maybe a pension of $1,500, and you tack on another, $1,500, that's $4,500 a month. That's more than half of an assisted living cost. So it really gets you across the finish line there and can extend your funds dramatically. Now, the VA benefit, in my opinion, is more difficult to demonstrate eligibility for. But once you do, the application process is less onerous and much quicker than the Medicaid application process. So it's kind of flipped. So aid and attendance has 5 requirements. 1, you have to be a wartime veteran who served at least 90 active duty days, one of those days being during a wartime conflict. So it's World War II, Korean conflict, Vietnam War, or the Gulf War. And you also have to need care. So you have to have some sort of care need, meaning you have to need assistance with at least 2 activities of daily living. Now, once you meet those 2 requirements, the rest are financial. 1, your care costs, meaning what you're spending every month on your home care, assisted living, nursing home, unreimbursed medical expenses, have to equal or exceed your monthly income. So if you have $2,000 a month in income, you got to spend at least $2,000 a month on care. Number 2, your countable assets may not exceed about $130,000. And countable assets is everything except your house. So you can't have more than 130,000. There's a little more nuance to this, but I'm not going to get into the weeds on it. There's a whole calculation, but we have a VA guide. You can go on our website. We're happy to ship it out to you. We've got a ton of resources there. We'll send them all out to you as a courtesy. It will detail the net worth a little bit more. So you can't have more than 130,000 bucks. And finally, just like Medicaid, there's a look back. However, it's only 3 years. And the 3-year look back looks for the same kinds of gifts. The downside to the look back and the penalties in VA is that with Medicaid, you get a 1-month penalty for every 11,000 you gift. With the VA, you get a penalty for every $2,200 that you gift. So the same $10,000 gift that creates about a 1-month penalty over here for Medicaid creates a 5-month penalty over here for VA benefits. It's a lot harder of a hit. So you have that look back. The look back, however, only looks for assets that were transferred to create eligibility for benefits. So I'm going to walk back and explain that. If you give away your house, it does not create a VA ineligibility period. I'm not saying do that. And this is recorded, so I have a recorded evidence. I'm not saying go out and give away your house. But if you do, it does not cause ineligibility because it's an exempt asset. If you only have $100,000 in net worth and you give away $50,000, you do not get a penalty because you are already under the threshold. You are already financially eligible. That does not create a penalty. And those are key planning tools to help preserve assets that we use frequently. So the VA application, once you meet those 5 requirements, you send it off, they start paying benefits. It usually takes 3 to 6 months to get approved. The big benefit for the VA, it's always retroactive. So from the date of eligibility, whether it takes a month or 10 months, you're getting every payment in lump sum and then your monthly payment there forward. So that's the VA benefit. Any questions there, Allison?
We do have questions. I think not so much about the VA, but going back to our
Sure.
previous topic.
That's fine.
So the first question is, how does long-term care insurance impact Medicaid?
Long-term care insurance is looked at the same as income.
Okay.
So if you are in your home and we talked about the income cap, long-term care insurance will boost you over it most of the time, so you won't be able to get Medicaid. In a nursing home, if you have long-term care insurance, Social Security, pension, long-term care insurance goes to the nursing home and Medicaid picks up the rest.
Okay. And then the next question is, would paying off your mortgage be considered with a look back? So for example, if you used your retirement account of the health impacted spouse to pay off the mortgage.
Perfectly acceptable. You can use that spend down, the column over here, the spend down money. You can use your spend down funds for any reason except giving it away. Typical planning is you do prepaid funerals. That's not, I mean, we're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, just 10 to 15 per person, but prepaid funerals. I often will recommend families, if they have an older car, sell it, buy a new one. You can do home improvements. But there are really aggressive, really comprehensive ways to truly protect assets. But paying down debt is a perfectly acceptable way to preserve assets, and paying down a mortgage is always a great idea if you have to spend money otherwise. Another option that we will sometimes look at is buying a more expensive house. I was working with a family. A wife lived in a condo building in Center City, and husband was in a Northeast Philadelphia nursing home. Their spend down was about $650,000 or $700,000. She was renting. So she went to her landlord who owned the condo and she bought it for 400,000.
Wow.
Now we only had 250 to spend down, and that whole chunk of money was absolutely protected. That can be a valuable way, or not. It depends on your circumstances. You know, you can't just buy a house like that, but this one just worked out perfectly.
Okay, the next one, I'm not sure. Well, you might be able to answer this. So, this
Sure.
is a woman who's caring for her mother. She's the primary caregiver for her mother. It's a daughter. And she said, when my mom dies, how long is the delay of the money's access to the point of death beneficiary? So, how long would she have?
I know exactly that. That's a great question.
Great. Okay.
So it depends on the type of asset. If it's a retirement account, life insurance, annuities, things that traditionally designate a beneficiary, it's going to be virtually immediate. You have to fill out some paperwork, but I would say weeks to months. If it's a jointly owned account between the deceased individual and maybe an adult child, it's essentially immediate. Ownership automatically transfers.
Okay.
If it's an asset held in the name of the deceased individual with no beneficiary and no joint owner, that goes through probate. Normally, I would say a month to 3 months. Because of the pandemic, I'm saying 3 to 6 months before you have access to funds.
So, the related question is, would there be any benefit? It sounds like there might be, of putting the beneficiary on the account at present so that they can have immediate access.
Potentially. So it's hard to say yes, it's hard to say no. If the account owner wants to do that, absolutely, they're perfectly permissible. Downside to that is sometimes banks won't honor beneficiary designations on non-retirement, non-annuity accounts. That's always a risk. Also, you run the risk of disinheriting people unnecessarily. And there are also tax issues related to not beneficiaries, but there are often tax issues related to adding people as joint account owners. So you want to look at the whole concept there. You want to look at family dynamics, how many beneficiaries they are, there would be, how many people would inherit, what the nature of the assets are, things like that. And then you put a plan together. But the short answer is, it is perfectly reasonable and perfectly doable to create a non-probate estate to have access to the funds more quickly and also save on expenses and administrative time.
Thank you. So no more questions immediately.
Okay.
Bryan, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about both power of attorney,
Yeah.
so we can get an idea of the kind of power of attorney you would need to do with a lawyer.
That's where I was going next, right there.
Amazing. And then also guardianship.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So that's, Alice, that's exactly where I wanted to go next. So we touched on care. Remember, we have the three legs to the stool. We touched on care. We touched on financial. The last we have to touch on is legal. Social, financial, legal, the three legs to the stool. So everyone here, if we were in a room, I would ask you to raise your hand and hold it up. And I would say, keep it up there if you have a last will and testament, and most of the hands would stay up. And then I'd say, keep your hands up if you have a general, durable financial power of attorney, and a couple of hands would drop. And I'd say, well, keep your hand up if you have a healthcare power of attorney, a few more hands would drop. And then I'd say, keep your hand up if you've had it reviewed by your lawyer, even looked at it yourself in the last 3 to 5 years, and almost all the hands drop. The will, the financial, and the healthcare power of attorney, the criticality, the importance of these documents cannot be overstated. They are, without question, the most important pieces of paper you're ever going to have prepared in your entire life, in my opinion. They're the starting gun. They're the key to the lock. They are what allows others to help you when you can't help yourself. So, well, let's do the will first. The will's easy. The will says, I'm Bryan. I own this stuff. Here's where it goes when I die, and here's who carries that out. I'm the testator. I'm Bryan. I create the will. I designate beneficiaries who get my stuff, and I appoint an executor who carries it out. Done. That's a will. They can get very complicated, but not for today's discussion, because everybody has to have one. Go talk to a lawyer. They'll figure out exactly how complicated or how simple it needs to be. From our planning perspective as elder care advocates, we rely on the powers of attorney much more. So a power of attorney is nothing more than a 14, 15, 16-page document that authorizes another person to act on your behalf, a surrogate decision maker. I, Bryan Adler, sign a power of attorney appointing my wife as my agent. I'm the principal, she's the agent. She can do all personal financial decision-making on my behalf. And the healthcare power of attorney is the same concept, just for healthcare and medical decisions. Why is it so important? Because with limited exception, there is no mechanism in the law to walk into a bank or call a financial advisor or go to a title insurance company and say, oh, I'm Stephanie's husband, I'm gonna sign all the paperwork for her. No, you can't. Being a blood relative, being a child, being a spouse, being a sibling gives you zero legal rights. So let me say this again. Being a spouse, a child, a relative, a friend, nothing. You have zero legal rights to advocate for somebody else without a healthcare or financial power of attorney to do so. The problem we see in our world, because elder law is unfortunately by definition crisis management, it's crisis planning. We routinely have people come in and say, hey, I'm healthy, I'm young, I want some help today. Can you help me plan for the future? I'm like, yeah, we can do all kinds of stuff. We can protect assets, we get documents in place, but the bulk of an elder care practice is crisis planning. My mom is in the hospital. She fell and broke a hip. She's been suffering from dementia. It's getting worse. The doctor's saying she can't go home. What do we do? That's called crisis planning, crisis management. You can't sign a power of attorney if you have severe cognitive impairment. It's called cognitive capacity. If you don't have it, you can't sign a document. You can't sign a power of attorney appointing somebody else to help you. So what happens? You may lose the right to make your decision. You may lose the right to make every decision. You very well may lose your fundamental rights to self-determination through a court-ordered guardianship. So a power of attorney is me choosing who's going to help me. And it's me choosing what powers, what authorities that person has with regard to my assets, my resources, my decision-making. A guardianship is a judge choosing who should and should not make those decisions. It is a judge approving personal, financial, medical, and legal decisions. It is expensive, it's time consuming, it's restrictive. Powers of attorney are cheap, quick, and flexible. So if I can get you all to take away one thing here, to make darn sure you have a great power of attorney. And Pennsylvania has exceptionally rigid laws relating to powers of attorney. If they're not compliant with Pennsylvania laws, good luck, the bank won't accept it. So I would highly encourage, strongly encourage all of you to take those documents out, look at them if you have them, call the lawyer that prepared them and say, hey, do we need any updates? And if so, get it done. We all want to avoid guardianship. I am most passionate about avoiding guardianship, as you can probably tell. We do it all the time, and I see what families have to go through. It's truly agonizing. It's such a difficult process. I want to avoid it for everybody. And the theme to all of this, whether it's care, whether it's financial, whether it's legal, is plan early. There's a 5-year look back. There's a 3-year look back. Start planning with your assets early. So you have money protected if you need Medicaid. You have money protected if you need VA. Put a care plan in place when you're diagnosed with a condition. If you have mild cognitive impairment, you just got diagnosed with Parkinson's, you just got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, start planning now. Don't wait till there's a crisis. Don't wait till you see smoke on the horizon. You don't have powers of attorney, get them in place now. The earlier you plan for all this, the better off you're going to be. All right, Allison, what questions do we have now? Okay. I'm all fired up.
So I feel similarly passionate too about avoiding guardianship. We are getting some questions. What is it that's so traumatic about guardianship? Do you have to go to
I'll walk through the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Oh, awesome. Do you guys, is it okay if I stand up?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I'm gonna stand up. I sit a lot. I'm gonna stand, I'm gonna lean, I'll pace about. So let's look at these two options, power of attorney versus guardianship. So family comes to me and says, hey, my wife and I, we need powers of attorney. I say, great. We sit down, I get some basic information. 2 weeks later, they come in, we review them, they sign them, they're completely protected. 2 weeks. Now, it's a little more sophisticated than that, but that's about what it looks like. Now, guardianship. Husband comes into me and says, my wife's got severe cognitive impairment, and I meet with wife, and there's just no chance she can sign a POA. Say, okay, we got to file for guardianship. Okay, what does this look like? First, we have to file a petition with the orphans court that says, wife suffers from these conditions. She has these family members. Her assets are X, Y, and Z. Her income is A, B, and C. Her children or her siblings or her heirs at law, her next of kin, all have to consent to this, or it becomes a contested guardianship. I'll talk about that in a minute. They have to consent. So you got to reach out to all these people that might be God knows where. Sometimes siblings are estranged, or they don't have the right addresses. So you got to try and find these people and get them to consent, ideally, or at least prove that you tried to find them. Then you file a petition. That has to be backed up with physician's interrogatories called a G6. That's a doctor's formal questioning. What's the condition? How long have you known this patient? How are you treating it? How does this affect the alleged incapacitated person's ability to manage finances, make decisions for their safety, make decisions for themselves, effectively evaluate information? And you file that. And you wait months. In the normal world is 90 days. Now we're looking at 6 months, and you wait, and you have a hearing. And at the hearing, you run the risk that the doctor is going to have to testify in person, either over the phone, Zoom, or in person. You run the risk the judge is going to require your loved one, the alleged incapacitated person, to show up. You know how traumatic that is for someone with dementia? To have to show up in a courtroom, a completely unfamiliar place, and have to theoretically be questioned. That doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen. The judge might appoint a lawyer for the alleged incapacitated person. Say, I got another player in here. Then you go to court, you get asked all these questions, and the proposed guardian gets up there, and I ask all these questions, and we're there for anywhere between, and I mean this, anywhere between 5 minutes and 5 hours. I've had guardianship hearings last 5 minutes. I've had them last 5 hours. And then you're appointed guardian. Great. What can you do with that? Just about nothing. You can make residential decisions and medical decisions, and you can spend the person's income, but you cannot spend principal. In my world, we're getting guardianship because someone has dementia and they need care. And if they need care, what else does that mean? They need money to pay for it. So we go in there and the judge says, okay, you can spend you can spend income, which is just the Social Security, just the pension. But if you want to spend more than that, like the $10,000 a month it would cost me in a nursing home, or the $6,000 a month in assisted living, you have to ask for an allowance from the court. You have to ask for permission to spend these dollars. And if at the end of the year, what you told me the assets were in the original filing don't match up with what you tell me at the end of the year, the annual inventory, you're gonna get hauled in there. The judge is gonna say, why don't these numbers reconcile? I said you could spend $10,000. This is $90,000 light. What did you do? Well, I paid for the assisted living every month. I didn't allow you to do that. It would most likely be a slap on the wrist. But does anybody want to get hauled in front of a judge and get yelled at? I get yelled at by judges all the time. I still get scared by it. So guardianship is expensive, it's time consuming. And there's another consequence to it. I got a family I'm working with right now. And this is sort of the one I had in my head this whole discussion. Husband came to us, wife, her cognitive condition was so deteriorated. She was on multiple occasions found miles away from her house in the winter in a nightgown. She'd just leave. We needed a guardianship because she had significant resources in her name alone. There's no way to access it. We didn't have a power of attorney. We couldn't go to the bank and access these funds, and we couldn't get on Medicaid until we could access these funds. She's in a nursing home. It took 7 months. Because it took 7 months, the husband had to spend unnecessarily close to $90,000 in nursing home costs. We could have protected almost all of that had there been a power of attorney or had the guardianship process been swifter. So there is a financial cost. The legal costs for it are higher than a power of attorney, certainly. There is a financial cost in that you might delay access to funds for care. There's an emotional cost. You're going to court. I have families that sit in my conference room, they shake because they're in an attorney's office. And when you walk into a lawyer's office, you feel like you did something wrong. You go to court, it's a very overwhelming experience. I'll share with you, this is just an embarrassing story, but I'll share it with you anyway. City Hall in Philadelphia, where the orphans court is, it's not air conditioned. Only the courtrooms are. So I had a court case, I had a hearing in City Hall. This would have been it was before the pandemic, so I think July 2018. And it was like one of those unbearable days. So I'm in a suit and a tie, to dress like you have to dress up, dress the part when you walk in. And I walk into city, and I park like on Pluto, and I'm walking to City Hall. Sun's beating down me. I get in the building. You stand in line because you got to go through security. So sweat's pouring off me. And the line for the elevator is ridiculous. So I walk up this big spiral staircase. I get to this courtroom, and the judge is like 6 hours behind. So, I mean, I am sweating so profuse. I could not stop. I didn't know what to do with myself. So I go to the men's room, and I go in the stall, and I can take off my jacket and I hang it up. And I take my shirt off, I hang it up. I have my pant legs pulled up to my knees and my socks pushed down. I have my shoes off in City Hall. Like, this is not a bastion of cleanliness. This is City Hall. And I'm sitting there almost naked trying to cool off. It was so agonizingly warm. I walked into the courtroom and they finally called it. I was there for 5 minutes. The judge said, I'm too tired for this. I read all this, approved, and out the door he went. All that agony, all that, you know how dehydrated I was? I had to drink some pickle juice after that. It's a tough day for me. But imagine what it was like for my clients too. All that angst for 5 minutes. So that's the extraordinarily long-winded way of saying guardianship is to be avoided at all costs, and it very easily can be.
That is quite the picture. I think,
isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you, Bryan. On behalf of everyone, thank you for telling us that. So I have two follow-up questions. One is,
sure.
This woman is saying, my mom has Alzheimer's. My father, who's 90, cares for her and is competent, and all of their assets are joint. Given that she can't sign for power of attorney at this point, does he need to get guardianship?
Maybe. So that's a great question. I taught a CE seminar for long-term care professionals just yesterday morning about this exact topic: competency, capacity, and ethical issues. And a guardianship has to be necessary to get one, and that's a legal requirement. So the answer is maybe, because having everything joint doesn't necessarily mean you have access to it. A common planning tool when looking at Medicaid, and I mentioned this earlier very briefly, is transferring ownership of the house from both spouses to the healthy spouse to maximize protection. You don't do it always, but it frequently is done. And that maximizes the protection afforded under the law to a primary residence. Without a power of attorney or a guardianship, you can't do that. So whereas, yes, you can go into a bank account and access funds that are joint. You can access an investment account with funds that are joint. With the house, it could be an issue. So occasionally, if everything's joint, we will try to forego guardianship, but sometimes you have to. And to dovetail on this, there is a healthcare statute in Pennsylvania that will allow family members, loved ones, interested individuals to make some undertake some modest healthcare advocacy for someone without a healthcare power of attorney. So we will look at all those circumstances to determine whether it makes sense to avoid a guardianship.
Got it. Thank you. How often would you recommend, if you have a power of attorney, how often would you recommend reviewing it? Annually, every few years? Would you recommend that at all?
I say look at it every 3 to 5 years. Have your lawyer look at it every 5 years. You know, the law in Pennsylvania changed in 2009 and 2015, and then kind of modestly, I think in 2019. Something drafted before 2009, I would say almost a blanket statement, you're going to want to update it. Drafted before 2015, you may want to, just because you want to make sure you're belt and suspended. But yeah, always have it looked at. Always take a look at it. And as a courtesy, at least I do it for my clients, even if I haven't talked to them in 5 years, if they say, can you take a look at this for me? I'll happily look at it and tell them it needs to be updated. Even if I didn't prepare it, I'll always say if there's a problem, I'm happy to do that.
Awesome. Bryan, lots of comments also in the chat to thank you for the levity of us all picturing you half naked in the City Hall bathroom. I'm sure.
Yes, it was quite an event.
Yes.
I had to go home. Like I ended my day. I went home, I had to shower. I'm telling you, it was like I was in a sauna.
Yeah, the AC doesn't work super great there for anyone who's
That's terrible.
Okay, a final question we got about guardianship is what happens, okay, actually we had a few more questions coming in, but I'll ask this one first. What happens if someone doesn't have anyone to care for them? Would the state appoint a guardian? What happens in that situation?
So there's two circumstances when that can happen, and we call those people unsupported elders or orphan elders. we will see if they are unsafe and unable to really manage their own affairs, and some good Samaritan, a police officer, someone calls Adult Protective Services, yes, the state, the counties will seek to have a court-appointed guardian to oversee this individual. If there is a savvy social worker, case manager, doctor, nurse, they will hopefully recommend a professional fiduciary, because an unsupported elder isn't just necessarily someone who has dementia. It could be somebody who just needs help, care coordination because they need assisted living, they need help paying their bills. And we do that in our office. We will work with unsupported elders. I think I have about 7 individuals for whom I serve as their power of attorney. And we don't do any investments, but we do their daily money management. I talk to their investment advisors, we pay their bills, we make sure there's money in the checking account, we coordinate all of their care. So if you have the means to get a professional involved, and I say the means, not just the money, but someone who's advocating for you to get a professional, you get some choice there. But yeah, Adult Protective Services will occasionally get involved and seek a guardianship.
Thank you. Okay, a few more questions came in. So one is,
Sure.
someone's caring for an aunt with Alzheimer's disease, and she is the power of attorney and healthcare surrogate, but she's run into a situation recently where some institutions, Social Security, which is notorious for this, will not accept the power of attorney and say they have their own forms that need to be filled out.
Yep.
However, the woman she's caring for is not cognitively competent to fill out the forms.
Most of those forms don't actually require the incapacitated person to sign them. Many banks will require this. It's essentially an affidavit that the agent is testifying or certifying that the principal is alive, that there's no newer power of attorney, and that the agent is the authorized person to act. Yeah. Social Security, however, does not recognize power of attorney. They have their own internal form, and that can be difficult. There's a couple ways to navigate that, but it's not easy.
Okay. I know one thing we do in our office frequently is write letters to accompany the power of attorney stating the non-competency.
Correct.
But it sounds like this person might need to check with their attorney.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Bryan, could you explain perhaps the difference between a healthcare power of attorney? Is that different from a healthcare directive?
Yeah, it is. I'm happy to do it. So a power of attorney is an authorization to act, meaning it is you appointing another person to make decisions for you if you can't make them yourself as the need arises. An advance directive or a living will is actually just that, a directive. It says, I'm Bryan Adler. If I'm in an end of life situation, meaning I am either brain dead or unconscious and terminally ill, these are my wishes, because 2 physicians are certifying that no matter what they do, I'm either going to have to be kept alive artificially, or they're going to have to install artificial means of life support. These are my wishes, and I'm appointing someone to carry them out. So a power of attorney is an authorization. An advance directive is a directive.
Awesome. And I have to do one quick plug. Penn has a website called Our Care Wishes that you can go on, and it is a huge form that guides you all online through a healthcare directive. Tells you every single possible healthcare scenario you might ever find yourself in. And I will email out that website to everyone who's on this call.
That's a fantastic document, because there's a lot that goes into this, and people think a living will is a joke. Remember Parade magazine on Sunday mornings? On the back page, people come in and tear it out and they check these boxes. So I don't think you quite understand the gravity of what this document does, or what you are asking it to do for you.
Going back to asset protection for a second, what about assets outside of the country, outside of the US?
They're all countable unless you can't get at them. So when you're talking about assets and exposure to long-term care expenses, meaning Medicaid eligibility, the asset has to be both countable and available. So let's look at this from a less difficult example, but it will get the point across. Imagine if 4 siblings own a beach house together, and one of those siblings needs care. In order for that house to be converted to cash, those siblings are going to have to agree to sell it or buy this person out, and Medicaid can't force a third party to do anything. So although the 1/4 share of the home would be considered a countable asset, because it's not available, you would get Medicaid. The only risk is that when you pass away, the Department of Human Services would put a lien on the property up to the value of your share, seeking repayment.
Thank you. We also have a question. This is more of a general question. Actually, let me ask you this one. Someone says the Build Back Better law was supposed to contain changes to this long-term care payment structure. If the law is passed, what changes might we anticipate?
No idea. It's been so bastardized and whittled away in every regard. I couldn't begin to tell you what to expect from it. There's supposed to be increased coverage for home health aides, home care. There's supposed to be encouragement for non-institutionalized Medicaid. But I have no idea. I wish I did, and I wish this weren't such a political football. I don't know how we can politicize caring for elderly individuals. And I hear this. I hear that this frustrating line. Well, we should encourage more personal responsibility. Find me anyone in this country that isn't in the top 5% that can swing $150,000 a year for care. We're having the wrong discussion. The discussion shouldn't be personal responsibility. It should be, how can we bring care costs down? How can we keep people healthier? How can we pay for it more efficiently? How can we encourage personal responsibility? You have to pull on all the levers a little bit. You can't just argue this is the one solution. And the way we look at elder care, if we treated our children the way we treated our seniors, we would have burned Congress to the ground by now. But they're old people. They don't vote. We don't care. They're stuck in a nursing home. And it infuriates me. When COVID first started, you saw glimpses of this. When this buzzsaw cut through nursing homes and assisted livings, you saw just the slightest spark of it becoming a national issue and national discussion, and then it fizzled out. I was crestfallen. As quickly as that spark started, it blew out.
Thank you, Brian. I should also say that Rothkoff has excellent resources available on their website, and I'm guessing that when anything like this goes into effect, I'm sure you will publish something on your website about it.
Oh yeah, we'll detail everything. Our blogs aren't, oh, here's a holiday cookie recipe. Our blogs are real information. Like I encourage you to visit them. There's decades of articles up there. You can search it, you can read them. There's dozens and dozens of articles on every topic. We want you to read it and learn from it.
Great. Next question. If you are paying out of pocket for care, is it tax deductible? So listed.
It can be.
Okay.
It can be. So healthcare expenses, unreimbursed healthcare expenses are tax deductible to the extent that they exceed 7.5% of your annual income. However, not everything is a quote care cost. Nursing homes are generally 100% deductible. Home care is often partially deductible, and assisted living, the care component, but not the rent component, which the assisted living breaks down for you, is often tax deductible.
Great. It looks like that's the end of the questions so far. I have a question actually, but I might hold it to you if you have another sort of chunk of that three-legged stool.
Nope, I got through it all.
Okay, great.
We want to go through the stool. I think we talked about them all, and the questions were fantastic. But yeah, we talked legal, financial, and social.
Great. So my question is, I often encounter this as a social worker, and I'm sure there are some folks on the call who have this situation. What if someone really cannot afford an elder care attorney or a private attorney in general, but they really need these services either because they don't have power of attorney or they're doing some Medicaid law advocacy? What resources exist to help with that?
I encourage, well, first off, there's always community legal services. There is the Elder Law Initiative at, I can't think of the name. I apologize. There's a couple, and there's also CARI. That's a public policy group or public interest group in Philadelphia that helps with elder issues. You also can call our office. I look, if you can't afford an attorney, okay, we're not going to turn you away. We're going to say, you need veterans benefits. Here's a VSO, veteran service officer, to help you. You need community legal services. Here's the contact in your county. We're happy to be a resource, even if we're not going to be the ones that can help you out. There's no way I'm going to let somebody go out there and just fend for themselves in the cold.
Great. Thank you for that. I will send out those resources also in that email.
And I would encourage everyone, we have an elder care box that we send out as a courtesy to anybody that asks for it. It's got senior resource guides for Southeastern Pennsylvania, Southern New Jersey, our VA guide. My partner wrote a book about his journey through elder care advocacy. It's all in there. And if you go on our website, you fill out the form and say, please send this to me, you'll have it in a week or 10 days. And that information can be really valuable. And again, it's a courtesy. It's just something you can use. And this isn't marketing materials. I mean, a brochure is in there, of course, but these senior guides, Allison's seen them. It's all real information. The VA guide is real information. Go ahead, Allison. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, that's okay. Is adult daycare, is that tax deductible?
I don't know the answer to that. It should be. That's a great question. And that's also a wildly underutilized resource.
Mhm.
Adult day centers provide med checks, meals, socialization, and you come home at the end of the day. They usually don't cost any more than 75 to 100 bucks a day. They're extraordinarily inexpensive. You get a big bang for your buck, and Medicaid covers many of them. So if you qualify for it, for Medicaid, and you like the adult day concept, it's fantastic. There's one up in the Northeast that caters to, one side is to a Russian population, the other is to an Indian population. Our friend Vlada runs it, and she invited us up there, and she made lunch for us. Kathleen was with me, one of our social workers. It was so good, I didn't want to leave. And this isn't like she catered it just for us. This is the lunch that everyone had. It was awesome. Yeah, if you have the opportunity to use that, I'd encourage it.
Thank you. Okay, actually, this is a little bit of a personal question, Brian. Someone has
Sure.
posted in the chat how you personally got into this specific kind of law.
I'm happy to share that with you. I truly fell ass backwards into it in the best way. So I moved to Philadelphia after college, and I bounced around among a job or two. And I ultimately started working as a personal trainer. I'd done it all through college. I started working at a gym, and I fell in love with it. I just wanted it was long hours, but I got to work with these families, many of whom I'm still close with today. And I mean close with, like, I was a groomsman in one of my clients' daughter's weddings in June. So, I mean, really, I created these relationships, but I was in the gym one morning, it was like 5 a.m. and I was exhausted. I was probably maybe 25. I was exhausted, and I was working 80-hour weeks, and I was killing myself. And I saw this trainer who was, now he's got to be in his 70s, but he's probably 55 at the time, 50. And he looked just gray and exhausted. I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if I can do this when I'm 30, let alone when I'm 50 or 60. So it kind of dovetailed with the Great Recession. So I decided I'm going to go work out. I'm going to go spend my time in law school and let this economic issue recede. So I went to law school, and I thought I was going to go be this big litigator, like on the TV shows. And I did it for 3 months, and I was like, oh boy, I just wasted 3 years of my life. Litigation to me was who can scream the loudest and throw the most money at a problem. You sue me, for $1 million, I say I owe you nothing. We settle on $500,000. You're angry, I'm angry, and the lawyers go out and make the beach house payments. It was wildly unfulfilling for me. So I said to my wife, I'm just going to start a really basic estate planning practice in our spare bedroom. Wills, powers of attorney, because I learned it in law school. I worked for a firm in law school that did it. And it was enough to keep the lights on. I was still personal training. I still had to train because I needed to pay the mortgage. And a client asked me a question about Medicaid. I had no idea what it was. I didn't even know what the program was. And she essentially said, am I going to lose my house or is my mom going to lose her house to Medicaid? And I said, I have no idea. I'll get the answer. So I started reading a couple of books on Medicaid, on elder law. And I thought to myself, this is kind of a cool way to really work with families. Because with my estate planning, we did the wills, powers of attorney of CELA. There was still no relationship. But because the nature of elder law, this never changed. Yeah, we might do your asset protection plan. Yeah, we might do your documents, but care is a journey, not a destination. So the way our office works, our clients hire us year over year over year. I mean, we have families we've been working with for 10 years. You really have relationships, you talk about their kids and then their grandkids, our clients' children become clients. And I found this so fulfilling. It's fast paced. It's a wild, wild west. We kind of make up law as we go along. I get to work with finances and law and individuals. And to me, I get to do all the things I've always wanted to do and other things I don't, which is nonsense. I don't sit behind a computer screen all day. I meet with people like you all day.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for asking that. I really appreciate that and having that opportunity.
I also wanted to pass along a compliment to you, Brian. Someone in the chat is saying that your passion and compassion are encouraging and comforting. So thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much, all of you.
I think I'm going to ask if anyone else has questions to please put them in the chat. And Brian, I was wondering, since Kathleen is here, if maybe we could have
Yeah,
Kathleen give a little bit more information about the work that social workers in your practice do.
I would love that. Kathleen,
Allison?
you take it.
Yes. Thank you. So hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen McGee. I'm the Director of Care Coordination at Rothkoff Law Group. I'm one of 5, but as Brian said, 6. We have a new care coordinator joining next week, and we're very excited. I'm the care coordinator for Philadelphia and Bucks counties. We kind of separate ourselves geographically so that we can support our clients with the resources in that specific area, build relationships with their professional partners in those areas to best support our clients, advocate for our clients, and get them the best care possible that Brian was just talking about through this last hour and a half. So our clients retain our services for 1 year. And along that year, they have a care coordinator that supports them. We do an assessment of them when they first retain our office, and we address all of their needs. How is the care? What does the care currently look like? What is the individual's needs? What is the goal of the client? What is the goal of the caregiver? And we then help the client and the caregivers reach those goals. We work with them to access long-term care in a facility, if it's a nursing home, a memory care, personal care, assisted living, independent living, or to support them in their home by bringing in medical, non-medical home care, educating them on hospice and other resources that might be available. And really what care we come up with the family and what they decide to move forward with is what drives Brian and the attorneys planning to access the public benefits to pay for that care. So if the individual wants to stay home and they have X amount of hours coming in through XYZ home care, we then go back to Brian and as the care coordinators and say, how can we pay for this care? How can we support them? Is it utilizing private funds? Is it utilizing VA benefit, Medicaid? So it's a much more care-driven approach to elder law than it is just financially driven. And throughout that year, our clients' care needs change. Mrs. Smith might have an unexpected hospitalization, or she may increase falls in the home, needing new durable medical equipment, and the family and their loved one can contact their care coordinator and say, here's what's going on now. What can we do to help support mom or dad or our loved one in the house now? And we're there to support them along the way.
I used to be a traditional elder law attorney, which most elder law firms don't have care coordinators. I think we're really the only one in the area that really does. And I look back at my practice, I think to myself, I don't know how I did anything without Kathleen and her team, with our public benefit specialists and their team. I know the law, I know how to apply the law, but our caseworkers, they know the admissions people at the nursing homes, the assisted livings, the discharge planners. Our Medicaid specialists know the caseworkers at the county. They have these relationships that really helps us advocate for our clients. Whereas in my old practice, when I first started in elder law all these years ago, I didn't know any of this stuff. Like, I kind of had relationships, but I was too busy doing too much. And I look at what Kathleen and her team do, and upon their shoulders I stand. But for them, we'd be nowhere.
It's hard to be that center of the wheel. There's so many, the family's so overwhelmed with everything going on that they might have questions about insurance or about a home care company, about a certain benefit under their insurance. What does hospice include? So we encourage them to come to us with those questions so we can support them. And if we don't know the answers, we'll direct them, or not if we don't know the answers, if it's not something that we can address, we'll point them in the right direction of who to go to, where to get those answers. We try to be and strive to be that center of the wheel. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you. I want to give sort of a last call for questions in the chat. We'll give it a few seconds so folks can type. Okay, while we're waiting, I'll just remind everyone that we are recording right now. You'll be able to find the recording of this on our website at penmemorycenter.org within the next, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks. I'm also going to email it out along with the Rothkoff Law website to everyone who registered to this event, so you will have it. And I want to give a brief plug for our next Empowering Caregivers. This is the last one of the year. Our next one will be in January. I'm just going to pull up the exact date. It will be January 14th, the same time from 12 to 2, and you'll register the same way you registered for this on Zoom on our website. We're inviting David Wall, who is a social psychologist. He's going to be speaking on navigating issues of sexuality in persons with dementia. So changes in relationships, changes in sexual needs, changes in roles. If for some reason you'd like to attend, but you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable with your name being on Zoom because of the private nature of this, get in touch with me and I'll help you work through that. But again, that's January 14th, 12 to 2, and you can register on our website at penmemorycenter.org. Bryan, it doesn't look like there are more questions coming in, but rather lots of compliments and thank yous and appreciation. And I want to echo that to both you and Kathleen and Donna and say thank you so much for taking the time out of what I know is a very crazy season.
Okay.
Come here and speak for us. I personally always find it very helpful to hear you answer questions, and it seems like others did as well.
And we thank you as well. I mean, Penn Memory, you guys are fabulous partners with us. We adore all of you and really enjoy our work together. So thank you for the opportunity.
Likewise.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Good
Bye.
luck, everybody.